So how do you talk to clients who receive a session and maybe during the session, they're like, yeah, I didn't really feel anything. Didn't really get anything out of that. And then after the session, they're like, I don't really feel anything. Didn't really get anything out of that. How do we as Reiki practitioners address that and talk about that? How do we talk to that client who says, yeah, I didn't really get anything out of this? First and foremost, I want to encourage us to release judgment of ourselves and any feelings of inadequacy that we might have as a Reiki practitioner stemming from this client's experience. So if you have a client or clients who don't feel anything during the session, who don't feel or experience anything afterwards, it doesn't mean that you're a bad practitioner. It doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. It doesn't mean that you don't know what you're doing, and it doesn't mean that Reiki isn't working. So first and foremost, it's important for us as practitioners to release judgment of ourselves for anything that a client does or does not experience. And so release that and let that go. And just know that that is not a reflection of you as a practitioner. Now, I will say that it can be a reflection of you as a practitioner if there is something that you are doing in the session that might be contributing, not to a meh kind of experience, but to a, oh my gosh, run away kind of experience. So I do want to step back here and say that it's very important for us as practitioners to be mindful of the space that we're creating during our Reiki sessions and to examine the kind of space that we're creating and how that may potentially contribute to a client feeling uncomfortable or uneasy or not enjoying their experience. So I do want to make sure to mention that. But if you have a client who's just like, yeah, I didn't feel anything. Yeah, it was fine, but nah, I didn't experience anything. And afterward, nah, I don't really feel any better or any different. I didn't really experience anything. Please release judgment of yourself first and foremost as a practitioner, because it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with the Reiki doing its thing. So know that Reiki is indeed working. Now, one of the things that we can do as practitioners is to narrate the experience for the client beforehand. So to narrate expectations. Now, what I mean by that is that when we are talking with a client before the session, to help them have expectations that are realistic and to help explain to them that they may not feel anything. They may not experience anything, and they may not have any kind of feeling afterward. I think that too often we as practitioners may set up the expectation for a client that, oh, you're going to feel all kinds of things during the session. You're going to feel heat and you're going to feel tingling and you're going to have visions. And afterward, you're going to just feel all kinds of things and you're going to feel great. Maybe, and maybe not. And so for us as Reiki practitioners, I think that how we explain Reiki and any experiences that clients may or may not have during or after a session really goes a long way in setting up client expectations. And so let's narrate those expectations for the client to let them know that they may experience nothing or a bunch of things. And so there's a whole range of experiences that the client may have during and after the session, including nothing. And to explain to them that that doesn't mean that nothing is happening and that it's not working. It simply means that that is part of the experience for them during this session. We know as Reiki practitioners that each session is different and that clients may experience a whole range of things. One client may experience one thing, and another client may experience something completely different. And we know that Reiki is still working, even though their experiences were different. Reiki was just working in its way as it does with each of us individually. We also know as practitioners that we may have a sensation at one area of someone's body for one client, and then the next client, we don't feel that same thing at that same spot for the next client. And so it's the same thing with the client, that they may experience different things, not only as an individual client, but also within the session itself. So what that means is that if that same client who felt meh, didn't feel anything during one session, the next session, they may very well feel something and have a different experience, because our experience with Reiki can indeed be different every single time, whether it's for us as a practitioner with clients or for the individual client. And so explaining to a client that they may experience a whole range of sensations, feelings, emotions, or nothing at all, I think is very important. So let's narrate that for the client before the session, so that if they don't experience anything, they know that, oh, that's normal too. And that they don't have the expectation that they're going to experience these big things and then they don't, and they're disappointed, or they feel like they haven't gotten a good session, or they feel like you as a practitioner aren't a good practitioner. So let's make sure first and foremost that we are, well, I guess second, because first and foremost is to release judgment of ourselves. So secondly, let's make sure to narrate the experience for the client so that they understand that they may have a whole range of experiences, including nothing. Thirdly, Reiki indeed does work on each of us on all kinds of levels. And I know that I will say for me personally, that I have had plenty of Reiki sessions where I haven't really felt anything. And I'm talking here as a receiver and not as a sender, where I haven't really felt a whole lot. Well, I know that Reiki is still doing what Reiki needs to do. And I know that that doesn't mean that Reiki isn't working, but Reiki works on us on all kinds of levels, including in very subtle ways. And so while it might seem to someone that nothing is happening, Reiki is not working, indeed, Reiki is working in its own way on that particular client. It's almost like an avalanche. And when we have an avalanche, we see the rocks tumbling, we see the cascade coming down the mountain. But before that, there was one rock that had to shift just a little bit in order to begin that cascade. And if we're looking at the mountain, that one small shift of that one rock is imperceptible. We can't see it happening. We cannot look at the mountain and say, wow, I saw that one little rock shift. Here comes an avalanche. We can't do that when we look at the mountain. And so it's the same too in our own lives, that Reiki session may have created one small shift of one stone that will lead to another small shift of another stone, another stone, another stone. And maybe that cascade, that avalanche, is going to come months later and not right away. And so Reiki can and does work on us in subtle levels. I've seen this in my own life, where for years, maybe it didn't seem like much was happening with my Reiki practice, and all of a sudden, boom, because Reiki was working on that very subtle level. And so too, it may be with this client as well. We know that healing happens in layers, and we often think of healing as an avalanche kind of experience because we see the avalanche, but we needed to have rock, shift, and rock, shift first before the avalanche. And so maybe with the client, that one Reiki session was just one small stone shifting. And that is no less important than the big cascade of rocks, because we need to have that small shift of that first stone before the avalanche. And so as healing happens in layers, sometimes for some layers, it doesn't seem like anything's happening because we have to peel back the layers of healing and know that sometimes for some layers, it doesn't seem like much is going on. But indeed, there are always small stones shifting, leading to an avalanche. And so we can indeed explain to clients that maybe it didn't seem like anything happened, but that may have been one small stone that will indeed shift another stone that will indeed lead to an avalanche. And you're going to see that avalanche. You might just feel it too. And so we can help to set expectations for the clients by explaining these things, including afterward when they say to us, when we check in with them, how are you doing after the session? They're like, yeah, I really ain't feeling anything. What did you even do? Well, they may indeed very well be healing on all kinds of levels that are very subtle at this time. And that as we heal more and more deeply, oftentimes the layers, the levels can become more apparent. So trust in the process, trust in Reiki, trust in yourself as a practitioner, and trust too that that client received exactly what they needed to receive at that time, and that if they were to have another session, they may very well have a different experience. So sending lots of blessings and best wishes to narrating the experience for the client, the expectations for the client, to know that they may experience a whole lot of things or nothing at all, and it is all exactly what needs to happen. Sending lots of blessings and best wishes to those client conversations.